In this video, we shall come to know about the MySQLi API.
Now for MySQLi API, in order to display or demonstrate the use of MySQLi API, this is the first example in which the procedural interface is used. And using the procedural functions, here I am showing you how you can display records by selecting the records from a table. So in other words, I want to execute the select star from employee query and display the result to see as to how many records are there. So if you try to compare every function in MySQL I with MySQL, you will find that only difference probably is the adding I into the name of the function. Instead of MySQL connect, there will be MySQL I connect and so on. Before that, let me tell you one more thing, that MySQL I API is available in all the PHP installations with PHP 5 as well as PHP 7. So if you have a PHP 7 module installed in your bundle, especially the web server bundle containing Apache, MySQL and PHP. If you have a latest XAMPP server, then this 7 version of PHP will be available, and this code will actually indeed run on the XAMPP with PHP 7 also. So I'm going to show you the execution on the XAMPP server itself. So for that, let me start the XAMPP server and show you the home page, and in which PHP 7 is present and MySQL I has been enabled. So let me show you that. So this is the home page of XAMPP server, and go on to click this PHP info. The PHP version is 7, and down the line if you go and search for MySQL I, it will show you the presence of MySQL I API. So which means that MySQL I API functions will now be executable on this. Okay, so let us go back to that PHP script which shows the procedural functions used from this MySQL I API. So starting with MySQL I connect, this function also requires the arguments like localhost, root is the username, there is password, no password has been set, and the name of the table to be connected, or rather name of the database to be connected. So this will create a connection resource. If unable to connect, then there will be some error. You will display the error message properly to tell the user that the connection has not been established. Otherwise, execute the select query, select star from employee by MySQL I query instead of MySQL query was the earlier in the earlier case, right? In the result, how many number of rows have appeared that can be found by the function MySQLi num rows. Okay, and run a loop over it and fetch one row at a time and display the contents of the row. Row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3 will respectively be displaying the values of employee ID, name, address and salary. All these fields will be displayed in one for one record. Such like as many number of records are there, that many times this loop will run. Okay, so just a equivalent activity of MySQL API, in which also you ran through the entire result set to display the records. So let us run this program and see. We now know that there are 2 records into it, or I wonder how many records are there. That many records will be displayed. Let us see how many records are there. So there are these 2 records in this employee table. We should be able to get the 2 records when we run our PHP script mysql i.php. So let us run it. So there you see mysql i.php has been executed in the browser. Employee ID 1, name Raju, address Nanded. This is our first record, and this is the second record. So the contents of the two records in the table have been displayed by the procedural interface functions of mysql I API. Okay. Next, let us see the use of MySQL I functions which have an object-oriented approach towards the database handling activities. So, what you have to do? First and foremost, you have to create an object of MySQL I class. So, this is the statement CONN is equal to new MySQL I. The constructor takes three arguments: name of the server, which is localhost, username is root, password has not been set. So all these credentials are required to set up a MySQL I object. If not properly configured, it will result into an error, display the error message and stop the execution. Otherwise, go on to the next step. Execute this query: create database testdb. Okay, all you have to do is to execute a MySQL object arrow query function. Query function will take this argument. If this function is properly executed, it will return true, and if it is true, then give a message database created successfully, otherwise give an error message. Right? Next step is to select the newly created database by using the selectDB function of the MySQL I class, and then you have to run a query which will create a table. Create table employee, the syntax of the create table employee is according to the standard SQL syntax, in which name, address and salary are the fields. Their data type and size is mentioned along with the different constraints. In addition, this employee ID table field is also specified, which will be acting as a primary key. Again, query is executed by the query method or function inside the MySQL class. If executed properly, the success message will be displayed, otherwise the error message will be displayed. And finally, you will have to execute an insert query. Insert into employee, these are the field names and these are the values. Execute the query. If success, give the success message, otherwise give the failure message. And lastly, close the connection by calling the close method of the MySQL class. Okay, so this is the exactly the same activity we are doing, but now we are using an object oriented approach that is provided by the MySQL API. So let us run this MySQL i1.php. Before actually executing this script, I will have to ensure that the test DB that was created as a result of the earlier example, that test DB I will have to remove from my MySQL server, then only I will be able to run this, otherwise it will result into an error that the database is already existing and none of the other steps will be executed. So I will first delete that and then run this. Okay. So if I execute this MySQL i1.php, you find that the successive successful execution of the statements, those messages have come up. Connected successfully, database created successfully, table employee created successfully, and new record created successfully. Actually, I should have given a BR at the end of each, so that the error messages would have come one below the other. But anyways, the operation has been done successfully. So let us go back to the PHP myadmin and check whether the test DB database, the employee table and the record has been added into it. So this is our admin. Refresh this. SDB is created, employee is created, and this record Rajiv Nanded 10,000 is created. So the object oriented interface is working perfectly fine in this case. The next example to show the functionality of MySQL API is to show the contents of a table by running a select query over it. Okay, so doing the same sequence of steps again, create a new MySQL object. If the connection is properly executed, show the success message, otherwise show the failure message. Then go on to the next step. You want to execute now the select star from employee query. Okay. In order to do that, call the query method of the MySQL class by its object. So con arrow query, the query is the SQL string that is given. So the result is the return value of this query function is a result set. So result is equal to con arrow query. From this result set, find out how many number of rows are present in that by calling this NUMROS, number of rows. Remember that this is not a function, but this is a property which is associated with the result set. Similarly, the property of field count will give me how many fields are there. Okay, so use these two variables num result and num fields to design a first row of a table which you are going to create in HTML. Inside that table, the first row will contain the headings. The names of the columns of the table will act as the heading for the entire table. So it will generate a first row. There is another function which is inside this MySQL API is fetch field. So fetch field result arrow fetch field name. What will it do? It will fetch the next field in the sequence, and arrow name will give me the name. So that means what? First result of this particular function will be emp id. Then it will be emp name, emp address, and emp salary. All those four field names will be placed into the four cells of the first row. So it will form the heading. And then using these two for loops, nested for loops, one outer loop going over from I is equal to 0 to num result. Num result is the number of rows. How many rows are there? And the inner for loop is going over for j is equal to 0 to num fields. How many fields are there? Okay. So using which every time when you access the row of j, what it will give? The each content of each row, each column corresponding to each row, fetch one row at a time. It will be an associative array called row. Row of j will give me row of 0, row of 1, row of 2, 3, and so on. As many number of fields are there, those values will be put into the td tag of the row. So likewise, as many number of rows are there, as many number of rows will be added up to the HTML table, and finally close the table. So if you run this script, you should get a tabular representation of all the records in our employee table. Incidentally, in this table so far we have added only one record, so you should be seeing only one record displayed in the table. First row will be the headings, and second row will be the one record that we added. Okay, so let us run this and verify our result. So MySQL i2.php, when I execute that, This is of course the connection successful message. Afterwards, a table is created or rendered by our PHP script, of which the first row is the names of the columns in that employee table, and the second row is the actual row in the employee table. So because there is only one table, only one row has occurred, but then as many number of rows will be there, they will be displayed one below the other. No issues with that. So that is the demonstration of both procedural interface as well as the object oriented interface of this MySQLi API.
In this video, we will learn a very important feature of object-oriented programming, which is called as inheritance.
This example shows how you can establish inheritance between two PHP classes. In this PHP script, there are two classes that are defined. One is student and the other is engineering student, ENGG. Because this class, the design of this second class is going to be based upon the student class. You establish the association between these two by using the keyword extends. So the syntax is class engineering student extends students, class ENGG extends student. So as an effect, what will happen? The resources of the student class, which will be called as the parent class, they will be made available to the child class or the inherited class. So what are the resources in the parent class? That means the student class. So here I have declared three data members or member variables: name, age and marks, and they have been declared as protected. The access specifier is protected. As a result, what happens? All the protected members will become the protected members of the derived class or the inherited class. Okay. It has only one function, which is incidentally a constructor. Okay. So what happens? Whenever the object is created, the constructor is called automatically. That is the definition of constructor. So when the object is declared, whenever the object is declared, you will pass certain parameters to the constructor. So in PHP there are two array functions. Remember that we have used these two functions earlier. This is function number of arguments, how many arguments that have been sent to this constructor, to this function, and then there is a function get arguments. So this is the number of arguments, and this is an array. Function get arguments is the array in which all the arguments are stored. So if the constructor is going to receive 3 arguments, the value of n will be 3. Okay, and the subscripts of the function get arguments array will be 0, 1, 2. So respectively, what I am going to do, the 0th subscript or the value at the 0th index of this function get argument will be stored in name, value at the index number 1 to age, and value at index number 2 is to be stored to marks. These are the 3 variables. 3 values received by the constructor will be assigned to name, age and marks, or rather the data members of the calling object. Fine. So that is constructor, and then there is a get details function which will just display or print out the values of the data members of the calling object. So this arrow name, this arrow age and this arrow marks will be displayed by the well known echo function. So that is what is in the parent class. 3 data members all protected, and 2 functions, 1 constructor and 1 get details. That is what is in the parent class student. In the derived class, in addition to the 3 data members that this class will anyway inherit, I want to make available another 4th data member to the object of this class, and that variable is branch. So that means what? Whenever
an object of this engg class will be declared, it will have 4 data members, 3 from the parent class, name, age, marks, and 4 its own, fourth its own. So what will happen when I declare the object of this class? It will require 4 parameters. So for example, in this declaration of the object, S1 is equal to new engineering student, new engg, I am sending 4 arguments: name, age, marks, and branch. So these 4 arguments will be received by the constructor of the child class. Function number of arguments will be 4, out of which the 3 arguments, all the arguments will be stored in the array function get arguments. Now it will have value at index number 0, 1, 2 and 3, out of which the values at index number 0, 1, 2, 0, 1 and 2, they will be used to call the constructor of the parent class. So the parent class constructor will take on the values of function get argument 0, 1, 2. So this constructor will be called, and the data members name, age and marks will be initialized with the provided values. Okay, and then the remaining part of the child class constructor is to assign the 4th value in the array to the branch data member that is introduced in the child class itself. Okay, so you are calling a constructor from the constructor, you are calling a parent constructor from the child constructor. Okay, so that is the advantage of establishing the inheritance. Okay, and then there is a get details function also, which will in turn call the parent get details and print out the remaining data member branch. Incidentally, this is also an example of function overriding, because get details function was defined in the parent class, but it was having only this much of functionality. Now you want to extend the functionality of the child class get details. So therefore you are redefining it so that when the get details function is called by the object of the child class, this get details will be called. Incidentally, through or from inside that you are calling the parent get details class, that is a different issue. But this get details function has been overridden by the engineering class. So this is the simple implementation of our inheritance. Create an object of the child class, give parameters to it. Those parameters will be intercepted by the constructor, of which the first 3 will be passed on to the constructor of the parent class, and then you call the get details to just display all the data members of the calling object. Okay, so this is a simple demonstration of inheritance. Let us see the execution of this example. So the name of the script is inherit ex.php. This is the result. Name, age and marks, and the branch is CSC. That's how the result is displayed. Okay, so this is the example of inheritance.
In this video, let us get acquainted with the idea of class and object and how it is created or how it is used in PHP language.
Let us now put all these object oriented programming principles in a practical example. The script that I have shown in front of you is called as bookclass.php, and it is placed on the document server of our web server. The name of the class is books, and in which 2 data members or member variables are defined as price and title, whereas there are a couple of member functions, of which this is a constructor. Remember that a constructor in PHP is having a name construct itself, which is having a prefix of double underscore. Okay, and the two arguments that the object is going to receive. For example, if this is the construction of the object of the books class, I am saying physics is equal to new books. How many arguments? Two arguments I am passing to the constructor. So the constructor will take two arguments. First argument is given to the title member variable of the class, and the second argument is given to the price. So this arrow title is equal to par 1, that means parameter 1, and this price is equal to parameter 2. So this is the behavior of the constructor, right? Then there are some set and get functions which are called setters and getters. So set price will receive one parameter, and the received parameter is stored as the price variable, the value of the price variable of the object. So this price is equal to parameter. Similarly, there is a get price which will return the value of the price parameter, price member variable of the object. Similarly, there is a set title and get title. In addition to that, there is a get details method inside the class, which will just display the value of title and price of the calling object. Remember that this variable, a special variable called as this, stores the reference or the address of the calling object that we are going to use to fetch the value of the title and price of the calling object. So this is the entire class. Okay. Now we are going to create three objects. Remember that in order to create a object, you have to use the new operator. So new books, physics is equal to new books. Two parameters, we have decided to send two parameters to assign the data to two member variables of the object. So this is the title, price. New books, maths is equal to new books, chemistry is equal to new books. So these are the three objects that are declared and initialized by the constructor. Just print out the values that have been stored in these two objects, called the get details function. So it will print the title and price associated with the physics object and chemistry object, as well as the maths object also. Okay. Now I will call the set price method physics arrow set price. So this set price method will be called, and the value that is going to be passed is 25. So what happens? The 25 becomes the value of this parameter, and that will be assigned to this arrow price. Here this will refer to the physics object. So in effect, what is going to happen? Initially the value of the price member variable of the physics object was 10. Now it will be set to 25. Similarly, I am changing the title of the maths object. So I will call the set title, and then just to verify, the changes are to be displayed by calling the get details. Then what I am doing is, there is a get price method I showed you, which will return the price of the calling object. So I am returning the price parameter of first object, second object and third object, and I am adding it into a variable total, and then I am printing it out. So all the elements of the object oriented programming principles are used here: how to declare the class, how to declare the object, how to press the constructor into action, and how to call the different member functions inside the class. So let us run this script book class.php and see what are the different results that they will be generated. Okay. This is the output. Three objects were declared. For each object, the constructor was called into picture, and the values are, the object is initialized. Then we go on to change the price of object named as physics by calling the set price, and then you call the set title. Whatever changes have been done, they have been displayed in these two outputs, and then finally you call the get price for each object, and the get price returns the price, which is an integer, and then you perform the addition, which will give you the total cost. So that is the demonstration of the class and object as used in a PHP language.
In this video, another new feature of PHP 7 I will introduce to you called anonymous class.
So this is the example of an anonymous class in PHP 7. So in order to create an anonymous class, actually the anonymous class is the one which doesn't have a user defined name. So you can directly create an object of a unnamed or anonymous class. So this is the object of that anonymous class, equal to new is the operator which will create a new object, class. This new class will create an unnamed sort of class, and in front of which this is 10, I want to pass on the value to its constructor. Okay, so inside the class I have one data member or variable, member variable called as x. So private $x is my instance variable or member variable, in which in the same class this is a constructor. So the value that is passed here will become the value of this arrow x, so that means this x, and then there are two functions inside the nameless or anonymous class. One is add, other is subtract. So whatever argument that may have been passed to this add function, that and the value of x will be added and it will be returned. Same thing is with the subtraction. So let us now see what happens. This obj is the object of this class, which has this arrow x being set equal to 10, and if I call now obj arrow add, so this function will be called, because that this function is belonging to this object, and the value that is passed to that function is 20. So what will happen, this 20 will go to this y, this arrow x is anyway 10 because it is coming from the constructor. So 10 plus 20 will be the value of this variable result. Similarly, if I call this add arrow or obj arrow sub or subtract, so this function will be called, this 5 will become the value of y, this arrow x is instance at the time of instance creation, the value of x has been set to 10, so 10 minus 5 will be the value of this result. So that's how an anonymous class, a new feature in PHP 7, that can be constructed and used. So let us run this and see the result. So this is the URL anonymous.php in my browser. Result is addition is equal to 30, subtraction is equal to 5. Addition is, the first result is the call to the inner function add inside the anonymous class, and sub, that is for subtraction.
In this video, we shall see the concept of cookies in a PHP web application.
So here now I will demonstrate the way in which a cookie is set and cookie is retrieved in PHP. Actually, I will show you three different codes. One is the HTML form, second is the PHP script which will set the cookie, and the third is the PHP script which will read back the cookies. So starting with the HTML form, the name of the HTML page is cookieform.html. All it has is a simple form in which two text elements are there, and the method is post. The form data is sent by using the post method to a PHP script called as setCookie.php. When you press the submit button, the data will be directed towards the setCookie.php. So what is there in the setCookie.php? This is that PHP script. So all we are doing is fetching the form data by using the $_post associative array. Remember that the HTML elements were having the names as name and age. So these are the keys. The values associated are retrieved and stored in the two variables name and age. So use those variables to set the cookie. The syntax of set cookie function is set cookie, the name of the cookie and the value. Okay, the name of the cookie and value. Here you are setting the time interval, the URL and the other parameters as explained in the earlier discussion. So those two cookies will be set. It will just give a message cookies are set, and then it will give you an hyperlink. If you click that, this getCookie.php will be opened. That is having a code to read back the cookies. So this is the getCookie.php. What it does, it simply finds the value associated with the name key of the $_cookie associative array, that is a part of the request server variable. So from which the cookie name and cookie age are fetched and they are displayed. So whichever values that you may have given in the earlier form, they will be read back. So these are the three different codes. One is the HTML form, other is the set cookie script, third is the get cookie script. I'll show all these three activities in front of you by running starting from the cookie form.html. So this cookie form.html contains two text elements. Let us enter some data into it and press the submit button. What happens? The form will take the data back to a PHP script called setCookie.php. The two cookies will be set. Right? Now there is a hyperlink which takes me to the getCookie.php, which reads back the values. So these are the two values. So this is a small but effective example of setting and retrieving the cookies in PHP.